Welcome back to VATSIM 101, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the most important events that VATSIM has to offer. Cross the Pond. This video is not going to cover a specific Cross the Pond event that is coming up. This is going to be a general overview of what you can expect if you're somebody that's new to this event. So if you're looking for information about a specific Cross the Pond event that is coming up, I would highly recommend you join the Cross the Pond Discord and to check their forum posts. For those of you that are hearing about Cross the Pond for the first time, this is VATSIM's biggest event. The event historically has been flights over the North Atlantic Ocean, specifically between the United States and Europe, although in recent years, they have opened up routes between South America and Africa. There are two Cross the Pond events each year. In the spring, it goes westbound. In the fall, it goes eastbound. There are 1,000 pilots that participate with over 2,000 that express interest every single time. Like many other big VATSIM events, you will need to book a slot in order to participate. Now, as much as I don't like to say this about specific VATSIM events, this is one where I have to say it. This is not a beginner-friendly event. If you're somebody that has never participated in a large event before, this is going to overwhelm you very, very fast. I would highly recommend that you first try the Cross the Land events. Cross the Land events will help you get comfortable with handling a lot of high-traffic events without the added complexity of oceanic airspace. So if you are participating in this event, you need to make sure that you bring your A game. One of the biggest ways that Cross the Pond is a lot different than every other event is that they have a lottery system for you to get your slot. So with each Cross the Pond, they open up what is called an expression of interest, which is, as it sounds, you're expressing your interest in the event. Expressing interest doesn't automatically mean that you're going to participate. The planning team selects which 1,000 pilots are going to participate, and then they are going to give you a time where you're going to go book your slot. Now, the slot that you're going to get is largely based on your previous Cross the Pond history. Whether you participated in the event, whether you had signed up for the event and had a slot and then didn't show up, what your position was in the previous event, or whether this is your first event. If you're somebody that's new to the event, you are going to be a lot higher in that lottery than somebody that has participated before or somebody that was a no-show. So it's their way of balancing out the event so that way newer people aren't shoved off to the side and miss their opportunity to participate. If you're selected in the lottery, the planning team is going to email you what time you need to go book your slot. After you book your slot, you're going to need to go back the week before Cross the Pond and confirm that slot. If you do not, it'll get released to everybody that had expressed interest in the event. So if you are somebody that expressed interest and you didn't get a slot, try going back a couple of days before the event and see if there are any slots that are open, because they will be available to those that did not go back and confirm those slots. The night before the event, you are going to get another email with your pilot briefing. It's going to give you all the information about your departure and arrival airports, along with the route that you're going to take. Another thing that gets coordinated are Oceanic flights the week leading up to the event. So there will be some staffing over a lot of the Oceanic airspace that will be participating in the event, so you can get a couple of practice runs in doing some flights over the Atlantic Ocean. If you don't have time to do an entire flight from the United States to Europe, you can start in a place like Iceland or Greenland and then fly to the United States or to Europe from there, so it's a couple of hours as opposed to a full day of flying. When you're selecting a plane, you're really going to want to stick to your wide-body jets because these flights are going to be between 6 to 9 hours long, depending on the route that you get. If you're planning on flying an aircraft like a 747 or an A380, just keep in mind the restrictions that you're going to have. Make sure you review the taxi routes for that airport. If either one of the airports that you are flying to or from is not equipped to be able to handle a 747 or an A380, don't take either one of them. The one aircraft you are not going to be allowed to use in any Cross the Pond is the Concorde. Mainly because of how fast it flies, it can cause a lot of disruptions. So if you were planning to use the Concorde, unfortunately, this is not an event where you're going to be able to. Make sure that any sceneries and aircraft that you're going to use for the event are fully up to date and test them in the simulator. That way, if there are any problems that arise, you can troubleshoot them before the actual event. The last thing you want to have happen is you load that newly updated plane for the first time, or you load in that new scenery, and now you're faced with a problem that prevents you from participating. If you do come across any scenery issues that you cannot fix, just make sure you're letting the controllers know. Chances are, if this is an issue that you are having with that particular scenery, everybody that's using it is going to have that problem, and the planning team will be aware of it. The night before the event, make sure you read through that briefing carefully. They're going to tell you what your route of flight is, including your oceanic route and your altitude. As mentioned before, they're going to give you a list of sceneries that you can download for each airport, both payware and freeware if they're available. They're also going to give you something called a CellCal code. The CellCal code is what you're going to use over oceanic airspace. The reason for this is when you're over oceanic airspace, you're using the high frequency radio band instead of the very high frequency radio band. With the high frequency bands, you're going to be hearing a lot of white noise in the background. When you get into oceanic airspace, you'll check in with the oceanic airspace controller, and then you're going to turn your volume down. Now, obviously, when you do this, you're not really going to be able to hear what's happening on the radio. So if a controller was to call you, you wouldn't be able to hear them. With the CellCal code, they can send a ping to your plane that will sound in the cockpit, letting you know that the controllers are trying to get a hold of you. You're going to turn your radio volume up, and then you're going to contact that controller. Load up your airplane and the sceneries in the simulator and make sure they are working correctly. If you run into any issues with the plane, you can either roll back your update or you can select another plane to use that you know is not going to give you problems. You do want to make sure that you are familiar with the layout of the airport itself and the flows that are going to be listed in that pilot briefing. Some airports have really complex taxi routes where the controller will tell you to follow this flow and you are going to be expected to know exactly what that is. Two airports that I know have flows like this are Chicago O'Hare and Atlanta. Oceanic airspace will probably be the thing that confuses you the most because not a whole lot of people that are on the VATSIM network, even if they have a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand hours, really ever encounter oceanic airspace to the scope that Cross the Pond offers it. If you're flying between the United States and Europe, chances are you are going to be flying across the North Atlantic track. These are predetermined tracks that will get you across the ocean. The tracks that they use change every day, and sometimes they can change at varying points of the day. Not all North Atlantic tracks are used. Based on the conditions of each day, they will pick which routes they are going to choose for differing times of the day. These tracks do not follow the ICAO cruising altitude standards. We all know the saying, east is odd, west is even odder. If you're flying east, you're going to be traveling at odd altitudes. If you're traveling west, you're going to be traveling at even altitudes. With oceanic airspace, it doesn't work like that because each oceanic track goes in a certain direction. So for example, Nat Track A may only be for eastbound planes and Nat Track D might only be for westbound planes. With the minimum vertical separation requirements being 1,000 feet, they could put you at altitudes that you're technically not supposed to be flying at. And this isn't limited to just VATSIM either. This is a real world thing too. And this is mainly so that they can put more airplanes on those tracks. When you're flying on the Nat tracks, when you get within 30 minutes of your entry fix, you are going to request your oceanic clearance through the VATSIM network. And I'm going to have a link in the description of this video for that site that you can bookmark to your browser. But as part of that pilot briefing, if you're on the Nat tracks, the event team is going to send that to you as well. Now, over the ocean, you are generally going to be required to report when you're passing each fix. When you're flying on the Nat track, you don't need to do that. If you're flying off the Nat track, every time you get to your next fix over oceanic airspace, you will have to contact the controller and let them know that you are passing that fix, and then you're going to tell them what time you're going to get to the next fix. Air traffic control may ask you to speed up or slow down to cross your next fix at a certain time. So this is their way of making sure that everybody is spaced properly. You also don't want to do any step climbs while you're over oceanic airspace. Do them either before you get into oceanic airspace or after you exit oceanic airspace. The altitude that you're going to fly over oceanic airspace may not be the altitude that you are planning to cruise to, depending on how they're separating aircraft. The fixes you're going to be assigned while you're flying through oceanic airspace are going to be a lot different than what you're used to seeing. With oceanic airspace, these fixes are based off of the coordinates or the lat long of where they're located. This right here is how you're going to enter those fixes into your FMS. Now, the vast majority of them that you're going to see for Cross the Pond are either going to be in the north or the west quadrants. If in our flight plan, the coordinates that we get to fly to are 50 degrees north and 60 degrees west, we would enter that into the flight plan 5060 November. If the coordinates we were going to fly to were 50 degrees north and 160 degrees west, it would be 50 November 60. After you enter these fixes into your FMS, go back, double check to make sure that you put them in correctly. If you put your flight plan into the FMS and suddenly you're starting to see warnings that you have insufficient fuel, it's likely because one of your oceanic fixes wasn't put in there correctly. Make sure it's following the format listed here. On the day of the event, make sure you're ready to go 10 minutes before your departure time. I would recommend connecting to VATSIM 45 to 60 minutes prior to the event to make sure that you get into a gate and you can get the plane set up with some additional time to spare. Have your flight plan filed on the VATSIM network at least 30 minutes before your departure time. That will ensure that the controllers have enough time to get you your clearance. Make sure your radios are set properly. After I get my clearance, I'll set radio 1 to ground on the active, tower on the standby, then in radio 2, I'll have the departure controller set in the active. This way, when it's time to talk to all of those different controllers, I don't have to fumble with any knobs to set those frequencies. They're already in there. All I have to do is hit the transfer button to get the standby frequency to the active, and then when it's time to switch that second radio, you just push a button, and then you're immediately talking with that controller. Make sure that you put your CellCal code both in your flight plan and in your pilot client. If you do forget to put your CellCal code in, unfortunately, once you get that clearance and you take off, it's going to be too late to go back and put that in there. Just make sure your radio is turned up. You'll have to deal with that white noise. I had to do it with one across the pond because I forgot to put the CellCal code in there. It's not a huge deal. Just make sure you don't turn your radio down when you're over oceanic airspace because those controllers are not going to be able to ping you and you are going to have to listen for when they call you. I would highly recommend mitigating any distractions that could come up during the event. Plan your day specifically around this event because it's not really an event where you can step away from your computer for any length of time. Obviously, to step away from your computer to go use the restroom or to go get something to eat or something to drink real quick is gonna be okay, but this is not an event where you're gonna get into your cruise phase of flight, think, oh, I have 6 hours to sit here and do nothing, and then walk away from your computer to go clean the house or to run out to the store. You pretty much want to keep yourself tethered to your desk for the event. If something major comes up and it's unavoidable, at that point, just disconnect from the network and go take care of whatever business it is that you gotta take care of. I would highly recommend not stepping away from your computer for maybe more than 5 minutes. And if you do, just make sure you let the controllers know. We'll wrap this up with a couple of key considerations about the event. Number one, Cross the Pond as an event is a very unrealistic scenario. At no point in the real world are there this many planes that are traveling across the Atlantic Ocean. There are going to be some liberties taken for simulation, so if there's something in the event that you're sitting to yourself saying, oh, well, that's not very realistic, that's not how they do things, the amount of traffic flying in this event would never occur in the real world. Don't worry too much about picking a specific gate to your airline or aircraft type. Take whatever gate's available, and if you have to take your plane and put it at a terminal where that airline technically doesn't go, just do it. Take some liberties in the sake of simulation and have yourself some fun. It is highly likely that you are going to be burning a lot more fuel than you're planning. There was one Cross the Pond where I was taxiing around at JFK Airport for almost an hour and a half because of how many people were departing out of there. If you're taxiing around for a lot longer than you should be, or maybe you're getting thrown into a holding pattern for a lot longer than you anticipated, go to your FMS or your EFB, however it works for your plane, add a little bit of extra fuel to it. The radio traffic is gonna be constant. Your voice is gonna be fighting for a spot in line just to get heard. So if you go a couple of minutes and you're trying to check in with the next controller, don't get nervous. The controllers know you're there. It's part of the handoff process. That's the whole reason you got switched over to their frequency in the first place, is because the controller accepted that handoff. If you're putting a whole lot of effort to try and beat somebody to that radio transmission, just wait for that controller to get in contact with you. Believe me, they will contact you. I would also highly recommend not trying to argue with controllers over certain instructions or things that they have you do that seem like they might be unrealistic. Again, Cross the Pond is an unrealistic scenario. There are going to be certain things that they're going to ask you to do that may seem a little strange. Don't try and argue with them. If it's something that you can do, just do it. Stay near your computer during the event. Pull up your favorite YouTuber, pull up your favorite podcast. You should be planning your day around this event. Make sure you're listening for those CellCal pings. It's going to be a high-low ping that's going to sound a little bit like the seatbelt chime in the plane. You want to make sure the minute that you hear your call sign over the radio, you are ready to respond. It is a very fast-paced event, and controllers will get very impatient very quickly. And that'll wrap up today's video, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you're watching this because it's your first time about to fly in the Cross the Pond event, I promise you're going to have a lot of fun. You just need to make sure that you are on top of your game. And while it may seem crazy that you're going to be sitting in front of your computer for 6, 7, 8 hours flying in this event, by the time it's over, you're going to be anxious to get in on the next one. Thank you very much for tuning into today's video. And until next time, this is Cross Hyperu signing out.